Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I'm going to go through my bike setup for Unbound Gravel, what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and how my day went. Alright, so one of the changes I made to my bike setup really shortly prior to Unbound Gravel was switching up my group set. I went to the SRAM Rival AXS group set, 42 tooth front chainring, and 10 to 44 tooth 12-speed rear cassette. So in the past, I actually had a 42 tooth front chainring and an 11 to 40 tooth rear cassette. And that was a really narrow range of gearing for me. Not enough on the high end, not quite low enough on the low end. So this 10 to 44 tooth cassette at the rear really made a big difference. The Unbound Gravel course was quite fast, at least while I was in with Fast Bunch. And I spent a lot of my time down in the 12, 11, and 10 tooth cogs. And it really made a big difference having that extra speed so that I could get to 40 miles an hour on the downhill descents. And also with that sub 1-to-1 ratio rear cassette, there were very few climbs that were really difficult with that low end gearing. So overall I was really pleased with my gear range on there. The only thing I might change in the future with a relatively flat course like Unbound Gravel is possibly moving up to a 44 tooth front chainring and a 1-to-1 ratio low gear, just because I did find myself in that 10 tooth cog more than I really wanted to be. The next change that I made was going to these 3T aerodynamic handlebars. And these are amazing. These are not gravel specific. They're made for road riding. However, because it's generally flat, really fast straightaways and the gravel around here, not a lot of technical stuff, these work wonderful. I did see a lot of people out there with the flared out bars, and that's just something that I never find myself needing on gravel. And one really good benefit of these is you can really get into a low position with this rounded area, and even if you wanted to, you could set your forearms up on here in a really comfortable controlled position. Next up, because Unbound is a self-supported gravel race, you really have to carry all of your water on you as well as nutrition to get you through at least till your one sag stop, which was at mile 64 on this one. Happy to say that my really cheap, inexpensive Amazon top tube bag here, bolt-on, worked absolutely perfect for that. I had no issues holding plenty of nutrition in here, and my 2 bottles were plenty to make it through with the weather conditions to my mile 64 sag stop. So I had no issue with nutrition or carrying enough water on me. If it would have been a brutally hot day, they did have a water-only stop at about mile 41, but because this year's was relatively cool, I was able to blow right through that one. One of the things you may notice right off the bat in this video is that my rear tire here is flat, and I'm going to use that to go into how my day went, which was really not very well. So I started out in the 7-hour section. I didn't know exactly how long it would take me to complete this race because I had never done Unbound Gravel before. I've done some other long races, so I had a good idea. However, in the 7-hour section, I felt like I was a little bit faster than most of the people in there. So I ended up having to move through the bunch quite a bit to get to the front. Once I did that, I was stuck in with a really solid, fast group of guys, and we were rolling 20 to 24 miles an hour for the first about 45 minutes or so, and then that's when the first bout of disaster hit. So after about 50 minutes or so, I had my first tire slice. Not puncture, slice. My front tire rolling through the very first teeny tiny water crossing, about a foot in length. As soon as I hit through it, which I was doing about 22, 24 miles an hour at that point, I had a slice about an inch long on my front tire. At that point, I had to pull over. I actually about lost control because the puncture was so large. The tire completely deflated within about 2 seconds. And going that fast with a completely flat front tire, I almost went over the handlebars, but I was able to save it and get myself out of the group so that I didn't crash anybody else, and had to assess that situation. So after taking about 10 minutes to go ahead and swap in my spare Tubolito tube, I was back on the road. I didn't have anything to boot the tire, but luckily none of the tube was showing through that slice. And the Tubolito, I'm happy to report, was absolutely wonderful, and it lasted for the remainder of my race. So two big thumbs up to the durability of Tubolito tubes. So after I took that 10 minutes to get myself back on the road and rolling, I was doing really good. However, I was stuck back with a slower group of people, so I had to claw my way back up towards the faster group. So after the next about hour and a half or so, I had passed over 100 people at that point, trying to work my way back up to a fast group to work in with them. And as I was doing that, the next bout of disaster hit. So after I made my way back through the pack to a faster bunch, at around mile 48 or so, I had my next tire slice. And that one wasn't quite as large as the front, so I did take some time to use a tubeless patch kit with a little bacon strip, plugged it up, added some extra sealant, and it held for a little bit. However, it did have a little bit of a slow leak, but I was really hoping to just nurse it into the 64-mile checkpoint. So the slow leak started getting worse, and at about mile 51, I had another complete flat at that point. One lesson learned is I did not have a mini pump with me. I was using CO2 canisters. I had several, and ended up running out. At mile 51, I did go ahead and take a spare butyl tube. Went ahead, pulled it all down, put the tube in, did not have any CO2 left. However, I did have a couple of people stop and help me bust out a frame pump, tried to inflate it, and the brand new butyl tube had a pretty significant leak in it and wasn't able to hold air. So at mile 51, with the gash too large to seal up with tubeless sealant and no additional tubes or any way to inflate it, at that point I had to call it a day, have my SAG support come in and pick me up, and had to take a DNF on the day, which is extremely unfortunate. Now, I know in the past I have talked about these Challenge Getaway Pro tires. I'll put a link up in the corner over there so you can take a look at that if you're interested, in which case I really didn't have a whole lot of negatives to say about them other than the difficulty of getting them seated on the rim when you first install them. After yesterday, however, I have to completely change my opinion on that, just because I cannot recommend a tire for gravel racing if it will not have the puncture protection needed. And there were a lot of people out there that did have flats. If I did have maybe one flat that I could tube up and keep going the rest of the day, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But I just cannot ignore the fact that I had multiple failures of the same kind, not just small punctures in them that were able to seal up quickly. Those are understandable, but just extremely large gashes in the tire that ended up ruining my day. So overall, a disappointing finish to my first Unbound Gravel event. But things happen. It is what it is. You learn from it and move on. But I am super interested. Have any of you done this? Were you at the 2022? Please let me know. How'd you do? And if you have any tips and tricks for me for my next one, just go ahead, drop it down there in the comments. Love hearing your opinions and advice. So, thanks for watching, and until next time, Enjoy your ride.